Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lily, and I am a programming librarian here at the Public Library of Brookline. I'm so glad you could join us this evening for Inside Abilities Dance's studio. Tonight, we will hear from Ellice Patterson, founder and director of Abilities Dance, about this local performing company that uses dance as a tool for intersectional disability rights. We'll also get a sneak peek at Abilities Dance's new production, Intersections V2, which highlights BIPOC and deaf/disabled artists and activists, past and present, while exploring how racial justice and disability rights advocacy interconnect. There will be a Q&A, so everyone is invited to get your questions ready. And for those of you watching remotely, if you are watching on our YouTube stream, you are welcome to type your questions into the comment section there. Right. This event is generously sponsored by the Brookline Commission on Disability and the library trustees. Many thanks to the Commission and the trustees for supporting this program. You can learn more and connect with the Brookline Commission on Disability at brooklinema.gov/BCOD. If you'd like to learn more about library programs and services, I invite you to connect with us in person, over the phone, or at our website, brooklinelibrary.org. I would also like to thank the Brookline Interactive Group, who are broadcasting and recording this evening's program. Those of you here in the audience, please note that the camera is focused on the stage, but any questions or comments made during the event will be broadcast. If you have a question but do not wish to be recorded, you are welcome to write it down and hand it to me, and I will ask it for you during the Q&A. And without further ado, I am delighted to introduce Ellice Patterson. Ellice is the founder/executive and artistic director of Abilities Dance. She is currently an artist in residence with the City of Boston's Transportation Department, using dance as a way to promote more accessibility on the streets and sidewalks of the city. Outside of self-produced Abilities Dance's shows, her choreography has appeared in the MFA, Lynx Hall in Chicago, Gibney Dance in NYC, the series Volume 4 at the Ellice City Group Theater in NYC, and more. She has given lectures and workshops at schools, universities, and organizations across the country. Welcome, Ellice.
My name is Ellice, pronouns she, her, and I'm the founder of Abilities Dance. And I founded this organization 6 years ago when I, as a disabled dancer, couldn't find a space in the area and wanted to create that space for myself and for others like me and not like me. And so we have our performing company, which we'll mainly talk about today, that are all adult artists with and without disabilities located across the country that contribute a variety of different artistry, not just dancing, but music and costumes and a variety to kind of bring stories to life. And our community engagement, which is similar to this, where we just go into different spaces and have conversations about the work that we do and how I try to make connections, try to think about where we can both learn in order to make spaces more inclusive for everyone. So this really came about because I was recently featured in this book called Inside Their Studios, which is available to check out at the Brookline Library, and about a variety of different deaf and disabled artists and their practices and kind of how their studios look like. And ours is a kind of a mix of both my home space and also virtually, because all of our folks are across the country, and how we create work. And in thinking of our upcoming show, which is April 21st and 22nd, called Intersections V2, thinking about the process behind that. We did an intersection show last year, and it was really well received, and it was honoring BIPOC and disabled artists and activists, past and present, primarily because those of us like myself and our director of music, Andrew, who live at the intersections of both. Andrew as an Asian disabled, wonderful composer, musician, and myself as a Black disabled woman, thinking about how racial equity spaces often are inaccessible for us, and disability work can be really white, and not think about the work that the cultures and the work that we do. And so this space is kind of to honor that. and to also take it a step further and connect those life stories to bills on the state floor so that we could change laws and make more rights for our community, because there's still a lot left behind for us. So I thought I would start in reverse in thinking of showing a piece from last year's intersection show. The honoree Eddie Masonette is a wonderful disabled Afro-Latina storyteller. So I will start there and showing the story of that work. And things that are really cool to note about our performances is that we have live captioning that occurs that is at the bottom of the screen for folks who might need to use captions but may not know ASL. We have an ASL interpreter in the corner so that those in person and watching virtually can see. And we also have audio descriptions in the music so that blind and low vision folks can know the dance of what's going on and be able to engage and to see that all come together.
And with interviews with dancers Sarah, Erin, and Caitlin, we took time to digest his work and the conversations we had, and I realized that we had different parts of the conversation last week, like Erin's own childhood stuck out, and access to school, and not being able to find doctors. Caitlin's understanding of her mental life, her works with her body, and basic swimming and calmness. Vera was struck by Eddie's writing and how we all have unique ways of communicating. And I learned in separate conversation of how he's been an advocate for different community members and getting them the health care they need, which ties into the bill preventing discrimination against persons with disabilities and professional health.
So basically, because the audio was tough, you can, I guess, turn the lights back on briefly. Not used to lights on, lights off situation. Was basically that we had conversation where the dancers got to meet the honorees, and they all connected with him in different ways. Caitlin in being able to newly understand neurodivergence and what that means as an adult. Dara in just the poetry and writing and kind of that primary form of Eddie's life. Myself in just being an advocate and in thinking of the different community members of getting the health care that they need, which was something that Eddie is really important of and just did for me today as being an advocate for community, which is what we all tend to do, and how we connected a bill that was about getting more health care for all, because there's still legalized health care discrimination for folks with disabilities, unfortunately. And we put all that into a piece. Okay. Thank you.
Kindness, each embodying a different aspect of Eddie's identity and life. One arm arcs overhead while the other extends out. Facing left, head pushes under bent right arm. As it pushes out and back in, they start to add their own variations to these movements. Signifying the parts of ourselves that are constantly in flux. They walk backwards, facing back. Caitlin and Dara's arms alternate arcing over, facing different directions. Erin's arms arc up and over like a light arc, wishing to turn back to travel. Alternate arms rise lower, arms held and out, the lost parts of childhood their truest selves, Aaron pushes right, then left hand. Dara then goes to Aaron as they extend arms and legs in different angles, spinning around each other in their repetitive movements. Caitlin wraps themselves in care, swaying side to side, contemplating crafting a life that works for their body. They scoop arm and leg out and repeat figure. They spin like a fidget toy and take moments to find, walk, and spin around the stage through their access journey and their bigger life journey. Caitlin pauses against the front swaying, finding comfort in repetition. Walks back, swaying toward Aaron. Dara steps away, one knee raised, thumb and index finger pinched like giving a 12 clinique and writing stories about dogs and cooking and supporting those she cares about and getting the health care they need. Leg and hand extended to my arabesque. Caitlin and Aaron sway arms and legs with a steady repetition. Dara looks up to back and front left corner as arms fall to sides, pivots front with bent right leg in front as arms and legs expand out. Hands cross, uncross, lower as one leg extends out, hops, arms open, close, the sort of spin as right leg explodes out and shoots last shimmies across stage, and follows the non-linear words of Eddie's pages across the stage. Caitlin and Aaron float hand down to the piano keys. Right hand sweeps up, then around, as arms sway like London fog in a mug. Arms extend out and back in, caring for community and receiving community care. Grounded, they lead. Dara pauses at front, bent left arm and right knee open, side and close, slowly sinking down and using her writing and her voice as a way to dismantle medical barriers, care for community, and make sense of everyone's non-linear journey.
Okay. So that's kind of starting with the work that we do on stage and how that kind of manifests into this wonderful journey of dance and music and costuming and words and all of the things that kind of can connect folks in different ways to not just our work, but to the humans behind the work, whether that be in the humans that we're honoring or just the humans that we're having on stage, and how that can all kind of manifest into this beautiful community of just amplifying stories that aren't necessarily as told. And so we're doing another round of it this April with even more wonderful honorees that are globally now for this year's, and thinking of how to become even more invested in community. So in addition to continuing to work with different advocacy groups like Disability Policy Consortium, we're also working with Easter Seals, which is another disability organization, to highlight the bills and the needs for our community, because I have always said we're not just here to do dance, but using dance as a tool for more, and that more needs to be very intentional and very strong, because there's still so much that we need done in our spaces. And so thinking about how to rewind from that and the types of folks we're honoring, one of those folks is Carrie Ann, who is a recently passed disability activist and phenomenal human who did a lot for disability parenting rights in Massachusetts. If a disabled and non-disabled parent are in custody, it automatically goes to the non-disabled parent regardless of any extenuating factors. And so a bill like this would kind of equalize those chances for the better of the child and the family overall. And Leslie had a personal connection because she, as a mother, had her own instance as a disabled mother losing custody and worked closely with Carrie Ann to regain custody of her kids. So it's coming from a very personal place. And it's has been beautiful to work on with her. And I will play a clip of that preview as well. Yes, feel free to stretch out. Make it a movie night.
This piece is inspired by the late disability rights and disabled parents' rights advocate and lawyer Carrie Ann Lewis, and also is inspired by the bill now trying to protect and support disabled parents' custody rights. This piece means a great deal to me because I knew Carrie Ann and her adopted and foster children, and because she also helped me as a disabled mother reunite with my own children. And she was an incredibly strong person and a strong feminist. And I just feel really honored to be performing this for her as an ancestor.
So that was Leslie. And it will actually be a duet because it will end with kind of the journey of my own path into attempting motherhood and kind of Leslie being on that journey and how we're kind of connecting in conversation with one another on different ends of that experience, and then ending with healthcare equity for all. And so that's a piece that will premiere in our April show, and just a sample of kind of how we took some research, but we also talked with folks as well, and living folks to honor folks while they are still with us, that they are mattering as well. And so there was a clip that is probably going to be hard to play. We shall see. But the activist's name is Cheryl. She is a Black blind woman who founded Our Space, Our Place, which is a nonprofit that was for blind and low vision kids, primarily of color, in the Boston Public Schools, because there was definitely a gap in need of blind students receiving not just certain access to different educational things, but just accessible play. We connected because she wanted to bring dance in for her students, and so we worked with dance for years with her students. And she brought so many different things like karate and museum visits and a lot, because it was important to get students where they are. And she talked a bit about that in the clip I have. But it might just be audio, so we'll just listen to the audio and vibe.
To focus on improving things for people like myself, right? People who are Black, people from other ethnicities. I am Cheryl Cummings. I felt that there was a need to focus on improving things for people like myself, right? People who are Black, people from from other ethnicities, and talking with some parents and other folks who were blind, we started to talk about, like, when is it then do you instill sort of confidence and self-esteem and ability to push through lots of, like, negativity. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized that, like, well, you can't wait till somebody's 20. You really do need to start working with kids. You need to start helping kids to, like, fully understand that they're whole, right? And that whatever their difference is, that this is not a bad thing. This is just a difference. And so also, based on my experience of seeking employment, I wanted to figure out if there are ways to change that option for other people. And voila, that's why I started Our Space, Our Post.
In kind of accessing academia, and she did go and finish from an Ivy League, and the challenges of accessing work and all that we face in general in accessing employment as disabled folks. And so our dancers were able to connect, ask her questions, reflect, and then we took her life journey and put that into movement. And so this is part of the rehearsal clip from that, as it is still in creation. So if you don't mind getting those lights. very much still in process, as you could see with hands trying to capture rehearsal videos and whatnot. But we have in-person rehearsals maybe once or twice a show run, but the rest is created completely virtually. It's just a more accessible method for a lot of us. And it has worked out well, as you can see, because magic can still happen even when we're virtual. And it just works out better logistically, better for dancers' energies and whatnot. And it allows them to be able to bring their fullest selves to the space when we do have in-person or shows. The dancers listed here and before all have different identities that are disabled or non-disabled, and that always add a note too that not all disabilities are visible, so some folks have invisible disabilities as well, and that is all kind of a part of our process in thinking of how do we adapt the movement and sometimes other elements of the work as well to make sure that folks feel supported in the process as much as everyone else does too. So there's a look inside of our studio, both the virtual and in person, and all the elements in between. The only missing part in this, especially for Cheryl's, is the audio descriptions, which comes a bit later in the process, but different lines and quotes and reflections are kind of caught, and then we add that in the end into the kind of overarching story whenever that's finished, and making sure that as we go, we're thinking of those elements and how we can really create the strongest story possible. And then I get to work writing that. And we have our lovely editor, Amber, who also identifies as blind, so that my own thoughts aren't getting in the way of good audio descriptions, since I don't identify as blind or low vision, but want to make sure that they are of use to that community. And we continue creating. And while the research or the themes might differ, the process stays fairly the same, and then kind of evolves as new people flow in and out, but allowing it to be ever so fluid so that it continues to be even more accessible to the folks in the space, and that lends itself to an even better performance. The end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to open it up to folks here. If you have questions, and folks watching online, if you want to type in any questions you have to in the chat in the YouTube stream, I can read those out to you as well. So folks in the room have questions. If my mic is on, I can repeat the questions so folks, so it can be captured for the recordings, and then we'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the first time, as you know, I've seen you perform in various venues, but this was the first time I had the oh my, little aha moment when I was reading along with some of the captions and how they're almost poetic, like the whole idea that was the London fog in a mug, and I felt like maybe is this like a whole new art form? It's not dance. Well, it is dance, but it's also.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if this is actually, is this something that you've kind of coined? Is this something that's, just the whole idea of the poetry of the words? Because first I just thought that the descriptions were just going to be literal descriptions, but they're not. You're intertwining a lot of storytelling, as you said. But then there's also with the music and the choreography, and I'm just curious. Obviously it's very purposeful, but wondering if that's something kind of a new thing that you've created.
I've gotten that a good bit, and yes and no.
Yeah. Can I repeat the question so we can get it on camera?
Oh, is the mic not on?
Oh, yours is on, but folks in the audience don't have it.
Got it.
So the question was talking about the descriptions in the dance and how they have their own artistry. So asking sort of, are you creating something new, sort of a new type of artwork here as you are adding the descriptions, new art form?
Yeah, it's definitely a question I've gotten a few times, and yes and no. Various elements of this, like audio descriptions and captioning, all of this has been around, but I didn't see a lot of integration even within the field itself, where if audio descriptions were artistic, then there wasn't capturing the ASL component of it for our deaf and hard of hearing friends, or if there was this amazing ASL moment, then kind of vice versa, not having the audio descriptions. Thinking about how to make that as integrated as possible, especially for some of folks in our community who do have these multiple disabilities that also aren't really thought of. How can we ensure that as many people as possible access the work, but that is also not boring, because we are not boring people, but artists, and how do we make sure that we convey these things that also convey elements of ourselves beyond just kind of access as a basic, where you think of like, you can decorate crutches and put stickers. It doesn't have to be just plain crutches types of things. It's kind of the approach that I bring to the work, and that it allows it to continue to evolve with the people in the room and let them take it even further. But the higher arching vision of the writing of the audio descriptions and the choreography and whatnot is all me, but Andrew is the one who creates the entire scores for our major shows, including our Intersection series, and does a fantastic job with it. And we just kind of work together and hop back and forth. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
You started talking about the music compositions. Do you always use original music, and how do you work together with the composer? What's that process like?
Yes, so I do always use original music, in part because it allows for certain even more connectedness with the movement of the folks that are in the room, but also because it allows for access even within music as well, where there can be allowed for certain rest and certain breaks in the music, or allowance for certain musical cues that might be needed to jog memories and things like that. And so Andrew also oversees two other composers who work on our other shows as well. And so between the three of them, and then working with some live musicians as well, there's a powerful music team that we have that allows for the work to be the dance work to be even more supported on stage. Yeah.
I will also ask again, you talked a little bit about virtual rehearsals, and that made me wonder, I know you started, I believe, before the pandemic, the group started before, and you've gone through the pandemic. Have virtual rehearsals always been a part of the practice, or was that new during the pandemic, and were there other ways that the pandemic sort of affected the company?
Yeah, so virtual rehearsals were a part of our work beforehand, but not to the degree as when the pandemic occurred. It allowed for us to be able to work with out-of-state folks more easily, as well as just provide space if someone wasn't feeling well enough to get into the studio, but was able to move in their home, still allowing to participate in rehearsal in that way and keep the process going and meeting folks where they are. And during the pandemic, kind of shifting into the fully virtual mode for a while, and still in part now, has allowed for amazing artists to be able to fluctuate through the company that are located all over the world, and allowed for partnerships that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And we did a fully virtual rehearsal process and production with the university in Sri Lanka, and kind of connected with their disabled student dancers and musicians with ours, musician and composers, and how that could allow the work to manifest in a way that definitely would not have been possible otherwise. So it allowed for a lot more opportunities, and allowed for growth too. While others were figuring out how to continue on, we were kind of already on that track, and it just allowed us to keep growing in a way that was a better fit for all. Yeah. Yeah.
Are your spaces mostly focused on coming together as creators to perform, or do you ever have spaces where people just come and move together, but not necessarily with the end goal of performance, but more community?
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat the question. So are your programs always sort of with the people coming together to perform, or are there also programs where folks are coming together and with the goal of more movement? Did that capture it?
Yeah, movement and community, and not necessarily just production.
Right. Movement and community as opposed to the goal of just production.
Yes. We have a community engagement program where we primarily work with organizations of all ages and provide movement work or lectures like today on the type of work that we do. And the movement work aspect can be a one-time workshop or ongoing recurring series. I mentioned we worked with Our Space, Our Place, so we taught movement weekly to their students for a school year throughout a few years, and being able to see growth in performance and movement on stage was really great, or in a classroom setting. And then some of them did opt in to perform in a couple of our shows, but outside of that, being able to just have classroom moments where you could just dance for the social, emotional wellness aspects as opposed to just performance was really great, and also important and needed too. Dance shouldn't just be confined to the very rigorous performance type of spaces. It should be accessible in a variety of formats. So I feel that. And we also do classes too. So we do primarily one-on-one classes with any of our teachers that identify as different identities that are disabled and non-disabled, and also primarily virtually, so that a number of students have had great opportunities to still be able to learn in those settings.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, feelings? No?
I was actually curious about your in residency with
Mhm.
the Department of Public Transportation. Is it for the
Mhm.
city of Boston?
Yes.
I'm curious, first off, congratulations. That sounds like a really cool gig.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how does that play out? And what do is that right?
Yeah.
So that's curious about your residency with the Department of Transportation, and how does that work? How does that play out?
So it's been a wild journey for sure. It's a part of my independent practice work because I feel like it's important for myself to be able to have a space to create and learn and grow outside of just this one particular organization, to continue being embedded with new thoughts and ideas, and also being able to share those ideas freely outside of just one organization. And so that kind of led into this transportation department path, and also not knowing as fully what the department did, but knowing that I, just as a disabled person, was having a lot of issues just navigating the streets and sidewalks. And so wanting to figure out ways that I can use my work to amplify what I've done in that process. And thus far, I'm coming out with a book, which is exciting, called Manifesto Against Defensive Design, and that'll be printed in the next.
Manifesto
Against Defensive Design. And so it's kind of taking all the different learnings that I had in the department and taking a lot of these really important tidbits that the average non-transportation person doesn't know but interacts with on a daily basis just going outside. So explaining those to non-transportation folks and why they matter, in addition to providing the transportation folks another lens to look at their work in an artistic and accessible lens. So it's been a journey. Yeah. All in edits, being printed, very fun. But yeah. Yeah.
Could you tell?
Go ahead.
Could you tell us a little more about sort of, you know, what is coming up for Abilities Dance? You have the Intersections B2. What else is on the horizon?
Yeah, we still have a number of community performances and workshops, so you can go on our events page and look up what those are. Some are geared toward kids or adults, depending on the space. And as far as performances, after this show, will have a virtual series coming up that hasn't been announced yet, but will feature some dancers that are creating work themselves and kind of thinking of the intersections of disability justice and climate justice, and kind of going back to our virtual-only process and production to lower our overall footprint in the process of creating work and seeing how that manifests into fruition. So feel free to be on the lookout for that. But seems like we're always up to a lot. So feel free to follow us on socials or on our website and stay connected into what we're doing, and keep thinking about how to stay moving and how those movements can be more inclusive to our friends in school or our colleagues or what have you. So there we go.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And if there are no other questions, then I will just bow, add a little bit of movement since you were asking about dance movement, but add a little bit of a bow and a twirl and a bow again. Thank you.
Thank you.